Hello and welcome to the On the Couch podcast, the podcast that gives you the view from the therapist chair. I'm your host, John Dennis, a licensed professional counselor. You're listening to OTC episode 56 with Shane Birkel, host of the Couples Therapist Couch podcast. Welcome once again, OTC listeners. Thanks for stopping by the show. So, where are we? Yeah. It is about 2 weeks from March, and that means almost an entire year of COVID life, and that is just unfathomable. Just really thinking back on a year ago, where was I? What was I doing? My wife and I were kind of talking about that, just the Valentines or the anniversaries or, things like that from just a year ago. And it just seems like eons ago. And it seems more so this year than any other. I mean, a lot of times we kind of look back and we're like, yeah, where'd the time go? Wow. But this year it seems even more magnified. So, but enough about that. But yeah, I want to get you all to the episode, because that's what you all stopped by for is this conversation with Shane, who Shane Birkel is a licensed marriage and family therapist, and he provides couples counseling. He provides supervision and consultation. He hosts his own podcast about couples therapists, and I mean, he just has this amazing personality. He's got a great sense of humor, and just very down to earth, very easy to talk to. And I know Shane from a lot of the online communities, and it's just impossible to find anyone that has a negative thing to say about Shane. He's just such a great guy, and I was really stoked to be able to talk with him just about the work that he does. And you hear him talking about some of the techniques that he uses and some of the conversations that he's been able to have with his podcast. So sit back, enjoy. I have here on the Couch podcast Shane Birkel, who is a licensed marriage family therapist, and he's also the host of the Couples Therapist Couch, a podcast focusing on couples therapists and the therapy space. So, Shane, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
Yeah, thank you so much, especially day after Super Bowl. So, now are you a Pats fan?
No, I'm not. I know. I'm actually really excited that the Chiefs won. I grew up in Nebraska, but I live near Boston now. Uh-huh. But I take it. It's a point of pride that I'm not a Patriots fan.
Is that even allowed?
Yeah, I know, right?
That's pretty cool though. So okay, nice. So yes, I definitely appreciate you being available first thing in the morning, day after the Super Bowl. So
yeah, absolutely, this worked out well.
Yeah. So yeah, give me the rundown. How'd you get involved in couples counseling, podcasting? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I started off teaching high school for a few years, and that's really where the whole time I was doing that, I was thinking how much I wished I was a counselor. And I wanted to work more closely with the families and be able to help them in a more personal way. which teachers are often not, they just have too much going on to be able to do that.
Oh yeah.
And eventually I just decided I had to go for it, and I went back for my marriage and family therapy degree.
Wow.
And I and then from there, couples counseling was always a really interesting to me, and felt like and as marriage and family therapists, we're really into the systemic approach to therapy, thinking about how the relationships in our lives really shape who we are and how we view the world. So that really led me to couples therapy pretty quickly after I began working as a therapist.
Wow. Okay. So I got to
Yeah.
ask, teaching wise, what grade were you at? Like,
I
yeah,
was
subject.
teaching ninth grade English.
Oh,
Yeah, it was rough.
uh huh.
It was really rough.
I have a special place in my heart for teachers. My dad was a woodshop teacher for like 30 plus years. So yeah, I definitely get you pretty much are a counselor, a social worker, a coach, and a teacher all kind of rolled into one.
Yeah, totally, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and these kids were struggling so much, and it was really hard to feel like I could be there for them in the way that I thought would be more helpful, in a more personal way.
Yeah. So left that, got the marriage and family therapy degree, and then yeah, when did you start off with the whole podcast?
Yeah, so the I had the idea for the podcast about 3 years ago, and it's really something that I wished I had had sort of as I was beginning couples therapy. And I feel like we go to our degree programs, and I was even in marriage and family therapy, and I only had one class in couples therapy. And I left there knowing that I wanted to work with couples and being really passionate about that, and not really having a clue about where to turn from there. This was probably 10 years ago. And
Isn't that like
so,
terrifying?
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I started, looking into some training programs, not really knowing what would be good ones to do, and a lot of them were several $1,000s, or,
Mm.
it's going to take you a couple years to get certified in a particular model.
You
Um,
didn't just have that lying around as a teacher, a former teacher and a
right.
therapist.
And well, yeah, because they're such big commitments, it's like you want to make sure you choose the right one too. And so I, I guess by the time I started the podcast, I was already certified in relational life therapy, which we'll talk more about eventually. But starting the podcast, I was thinking, wouldn't it be nice for other therapists to have a way of learning more about each of the models, learning about all the authors who are coming out with books in the field of couples therapy, and having exposure to and I really liked the podcast to feel like mini workshops oftentimes, that we're going into a particular aspect of couples therapy that someone can learn right after they listen to it, something that they can use in a session with their couples. So it's giving people a lot of exposure to several different models, so that by the time they choose to get certified in one of them, and I do recommend that a lot of people do that, they can make an informed decision and feel confident about the direction they're going in.
I imagine it's sort of along the lines of uh, a lot of the teachers today, I would say, and out in the field of counseling and social work, that idea of like niching down and sort of honing in on one particular treatment theory or modality. Obviously, it's not, you can still pull in other stuff eclectically, but that's sort of the hub of the wagon
Yeah,
wheel, I guess I would say.
yeah, and I'm a big believer in that for sure, because I think it really just, for me, or my perspective is that it really makes your practice sort of take off when you decide on a particular niche, instead of being more of a generalist, and you list on your website, I work with couples and depression and eating disorders and teenagers and, everything else.
Yeah.
Um, and then you sort of just go to whatever trainings are coming to your town that month, and you're sort of all over the place. And I'm sure there are a lot of great therapists who help people a lot in that format. But to me, if you, let's say you focus on something like eating disorders, then you know all the books you're reading are applicable to that. All the trainings you're going to are
Mm-hmm.
about eating disorders. All the clients you're working with are about struggling with that, so that you're building that experience in that particular thing. And I think it's so valuable, and it can really make your practice take off, and your expertise and your feeling of confidence in that particular niche.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So the one that you chose, what made you focus on that out of all
Well,
the?
and yeah, and I chose couples therapy, obviously, and I feel like even as couples therapists, we can niche down further. But for me, it was about this feeling that it probably started with before I even did the degree program in therapy. But then I was attracted to the marriage and family therapy because of the systemic ideas, and I just feel like it's impossible to understand ourselves as human beings outside of what goes on in our relationships and how we are
Mm.
present in our relationships and what we struggle with in our relationships. And to me, it's like when I work with couples, it's like oftentimes it's really exciting, especially at first. I feel like a detective almost. I'm trying to figure out what their dynamics are, what their losing strategies are, what's getting in the way of what they really want, which is more connection and intimacy with each other.
Hmm. Yeah, it definitely. I mean, just that concept of, you know, we're such social creatures. You know, our species by nature.
Hmm.
So the idea of just, obviously there are huge benefits to individual therapy, but most of what we're talking about, even in individual therapy, is either, our relationships and that system that we come from, the family of origin, and all of that. So, okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then uh, honing in on the modality that you chose, what made you gravitate towards that?
Yeah. So I'm a certified relational life therapist, and this is a model that was developed by Terry Real. And so I'll go into detail a little bit about relational life therapy. There's a lot of good couples therapy modalities out there. And one of the things that a lot of them teach is this idea of emotional connection, of tuning into your partner, of understanding your partner's reality, which absolutely 100% I think is super important.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of like teaching people how to love up the hurt part of their partner. And what I think that relational life therapy adds to that, so that's half of the battle from my perspective. Um, but the other half is that we have to teach people skills. We have to teach people how to be in relationship with each other, because in our society we're not taught that. And so we can love up this wounded part of people all day long, and I do think it's helpful, but it's only half the battle. We then have to teach them how to be in relationship with others, and that's a big part of what relational life therapy brings to the picture, I think. And we look a lot at power dynamics in relationships. We're trying to figure out who um, is the partner who's more off. We do take sides in relational life therapy.
Mm.
We're looking at the dance, each partner's stance, and um, how they play off each other.
Okay.
It's very directive. We talk about loving confrontation.
Mm.
We're going to tell people what we see, no matter how hard it is for them to hear. But
Okay.
hopefully, we can do it in a really connected way. We talk about joining through the truth.
Mm.
So I have to make sure that somebody knows that I'm on their side before I start to tell them some difficult truths about what's going on.
Yeah.
But it's important that they hear them.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's, I mean, in our line of work, we talk a lot of, the psychology is about the therapeutic alliance and how important that is, that, you have their buy-in. Yeah. And that that's definitely important before you start picking at things. Um, how how do you find that when oftentimes a lot of partners are resistant to come to counseling in the first place?
Yeah. So, one of the things we talk a lot about is leverage. We have to establish leverage because otherwise they aren't going to come back again.
Yeah, you cut
And
too deep.
so, yeah. And so part of what I'm looking for in leverage, I want to get, the leverage can't come from me as a therapist because they don't care what I think about what they should do with their life.
Mm.
Um, so the leverage has to come from it could be their partner, it could be how much misery they're in. That
Hmm.
often is what brings people to therapy finally. That could be the
Sure.
leverage. The children is often a really good leverage point.
Oh yeah.
It's like I know that you you get angry and blow up at your wife every day, uh, and you don't see that as being problematic because of everything she's doing wrong in their relationship. But let me tell you how abusive it is to your children to observe that,
Mm.
and to try to develop some connection for them, about the kids in a way that, like, are you willing to let me help you with this because it's having negative impacts on your kids?
Hmm.
And a lot of people get that. A lot of people don't want to think about that, but when we start to tell them these things, they get it and they know it. They know it's true.
Hmm.
And then that part of it that, like, I want to help you. I care about you. I see what a good person you are, and you yelling at your wife every day is not serving you. Would you help me to make your life better, or would you let me help you
Hmm.
make your life better? And so it's this, I'm connecting with them while I'm telling them a difficult truth about what's going on for them.
It reminded me of the Jerry Maguire, the like "help me, help you" kind of
Yeah,
idea. Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
And I
Now,
feel like,
sorry to
yeah,
interrupt really quick, but
yeah, go
you
ahead.
were saying the loving conflict. Now you're saying
Loving confrontation.
the idea of like um, learning to love it and learning to move into it as opposed to run away from it. Or yeah, can you kind of unpack that a bit more?
Oh yeah, sure. What you're talking about is something that I think is absolutely true. It's not what I meant. So what you're talking about, I think, is really important. I think there are a lot of conflict avoidant couples out there,
Hmm.
and they don't want to bring up any important aspects of their relationship because they're afraid of what will happen if they bring it into the conversation. And I definitely think that's an important thing that we can do as couples therapists, is lead them into that and encourage them of how important it is to talk about those things. That's sort of them getting more comfortable with conflict and seeing that it's healthy for the relationship and that we can teach them ways to work through it in a healthier way.
Hmm. I always
Because
refer
it's
to it
so,
as like fighting better, I guess, fighting more
yeah,
efficiently.
yeah, totally. Yeah, absolutely. Um, what I was talking about before as loving confrontation is the stance of the therapist.
Mm.
Um, I am going to be lovingly confrontational
Ah, okay, yes.
when I need to be with my clients.
Hmm.
So it's that. Let me give you an example
Yeah,
um,
please.
that just happened about a week ago or so, and this was a this was a couple. It's a husband and a wife, and they're coming in. And first of all, in relational life therapy, it's really important that we get each person's perspective.
Mm.
I want to hear each person's perspective. And there had been what I would call there had been an affair situation. It was, I think there are different levels of affair situations.
Hmm.
This was a really brief situation. It was really, not an ongoing thing,
Hmm.
just a one-time thing that happened. And I won't go into too much detail, but that's a big difference between whether someone was hiding an affair that was going on for a year
Yeah.
and it just came out. Um, it's still extremely significant. And so the wife had just had this affair situation happen, and she was coming in, and so the husband was really upset about this and said, she had this affair. This really hurt, and it's going to be hard for me to work through. I don't know if I can ever trust her again. Those are the things everyone says when they go through that situation. Totally.
Definitely.
And I'm being really understanding and really connected. Absolutely. She has to be accountable. This is, so we spent the first hour, and I work with couples usually in about 2-hour sessions
Okay.
at least. We spent the first hour sort of her being accountable, taking responsibility for what she did, apologizing. That was really important. That's always the first step when there's been an affair situation. But then, and it usually might not happen this quickly, but eventually what's going to start coming out is what was going on before the affair and what led up to it and what were some of the issues. And so she started talking about how this guy would call her the C word almost on a daily basis. It was really judgmental, really critical, name calling. This was going on. And so what I often see, so in couples, is that she's going to keep focusing on this stuff, the way that he was mean to her before.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to keep focusing on the affair.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're not going to get anywhere in the conversation if I just let him do that. He's going to say, well, you just had an affair. And she's going to say, well, yeah, but you were being mean to me for so long. And then it just goes back and forth.
Cyclical, yep.
Yeah. And so that's where, again, I'm going to start with the accountability for the partner who had an affair. And I'm going to say, look, this is a huge betrayal. 100% you have to be accountable. You have to take responsibility. And that's what we did for the first hour. And then as this information is coming out and this guy is being, sort of defensive, not really wanting to look at his part in the cycle, I slow things down. This is a huge thing. I think that's so important for couples therapy. You slow down the energy in the room. Mm-hmm. And I'm breathing and I'm pausing, and I might say something to him like, I have good news and bad news for you. And I pause and breathe. So everyone's just they're both just staring at me,
hanging on every word.
Yeah. And you can feel it just sinking in. Sometimes you can see the tears start welling up in their eyes already. And I say, the bad news is you've been verbally abusive to your wife for the last 3 years. Mm-hmm. And then the tears just come up, and it's just silence. And we're sitting there. And she's crying because someone's finally called out what's been going on. He's crying because he feels he knows it's true. Mm-hmm. And he feels sad about where they've come in their relationship. And I don't think there are a lot of other models of therapy that would just say it that directly. But the next thing I'm going to say, so I'll let that sink in for a minute, and then I'll say, do you want to hear the good news? And then I'll say, I'm sitting here with you. I work with people all the time. I wouldn't say this about everyone. I get a feeling about people pretty well. I think I have a good sense of people. And I get the feeling that you are a really, really good person. And then the tears come again. It's like this feeling like, look, this doesn't mean that you're a bad person and that you're never going to be able to, figure this out. This doesn't mean that I'm going to pick on you now. This is where I want to help you. I see that you're a good person. You just haven't learned the communication skills. I can teach you. Will you let me? And that's leverage. Now I have the leverage. Now I've got them. It's also important at the beginning to determine who is committed, because let's say that she had one foot out the door, and he was like 100% committed to the relationship, I know I can go after him in the
Okay.
way that in the way I just described,
Hmm.
because he's committed. He's going to be coming back to therapy no matter how difficult the truths are that I drop on him.
Hmm.
If I did that to her
She'd be
and
gone.
she has one foot out the door, yeah, I might not see her again.
Okay.
So I'm reading who I have that kind of ability to go in with first.
And with that particular example, that was like first day, first session.
That was in this example, that was the first session. It's
Wow.
probably not that common that this would happen the first session, but in this case it did.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I love that you were talking about, slowing things down. I have training in Gottman therapy, so they talk a lot about emotional regulation and the flooding and that 95 beats per minute kind of mark, and learning how to pay attention to that.
Yeah,
So
that's great. Yeah, I
yeah,
think that's so important.
having to like
Sure.
really speed things up and slow things down, like you were saying, can be pretty important. Um,
Yeah, and the Gottmans have done so much good research, and what them and a number of others have found is that when couples get into when they start communicating about these difficult things in their relationship, they are no longer present in their prefrontal cortex and their
yep.
rational mind. All of a sudden it's fight or flight, and it's about protection. I'm protecting myself from my partner, and then there's two speakers and no listeners at that point. And so what a really important basic move that we have to do is teach people that there can only be one speaker and one listener at a time. And the listener's job is to be open and receptive to what's going on for the person speaking.
Mm.
And this is like
It's not easy
for some people that, yeah, exactly. This is like a new concept that they haven't ever been exposed to before.
Mm-hmm. Which I never ever struggle with in my own personal life or relationships.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
It's usually one of the things I tell the couples I work with is like, I'm a therapist married to a social worker, and we both know the Gottman stuff. We've read it. We try to use it as much as we can, but yeah, there are times where we screw up. So.
Yeah, I think that's great. I that's a big part of relational life therapy, is that I'm telling people that kind of stuff. I'm getting personal with it. I'm explaining to them about my own struggles and my own journey, because I'm just a fellow traveler. I don't like the idea of taking the expert position.
Yeah.
Although I do tell people what to do a lot. I still say, like, hey, I struggle with this all the time too,
Well, like you were saying with the loving confrontation, like in a gentle sort of way, not a like I'm lording it over you and you suck. It's hey, I struggle with some of these things too, but let me help you. Let me show you how you can do it differently.
Yeah, I'm all about getting that buy-in.
Nice.
And I'm using the words people usually say. It's like, what would you're coming here to therapy because you're experiencing some pain in your life, or you want something different. What would you like me to help you with? Coming back to that question, if they start getting, if it starts getting difficult to know what we're talking about, that's always a good question to come back to. Like, what would you like me to help? What are we doing here? What would you like me to help you with? And get people to get clear on what they want.
Sure. Okay. And moving to the couples therapist couch, the podcast, I imagine that's got to be so cool to, interview different people and hear all the different, theories and techniques and things like that. I saw your most recent episode, which I'll definitely link to. You had a conversation with Sue Johnson with EFT. Are there other concepts and other treatment modalities that you're like, oh, I like that. I'm I'm going to borrow that, or yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's been one of the really cool things about having a podcast is there are a lot of different ways that it's impacted my ability to work with couples. Um, Obviously, it's for therapists to learn about the practice of couples therapy,
Hmm.
but I get to talk to all these amazing guests like Sue Johnson, who founded Emotionally Focused Therapy, which is one of the,
Yeah.
for those who don't
That's,
know, is one of the top couples therapy models.
yeah, I usually tell people it's like between her and John and Julie Gottman as like probably the
Yeah, those are
two
probably
best known.
yeah, totally. And so I get to talk to people who are certified Gottman therapists. I get to talk to EFT people. I get to talk to all of these leaders in the field, and it makes me understand how to work with couples so much better. Even if no one was listening to my podcast, I would. It's an
Yeah.
excuse to talk to
Yeah.
these like amazing people. You
Definitely.
know,
I'm having fun.
yeah,
That's all I care about.
right. Yeah, it's like a personal course that I'm, sitting there talking to them. So
Hmm.
I'm staying up on what's going on in the field. And then I'm building my confidence so much as I'm talking to these people who I
Mm.
look up to, and it's like really scary. Sometimes like going into an interview with someone like Sue Johnson, I'm like freaking out. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm talking to Sue Johnson. Like,
I'm geeking out,
and
man.
yeah. But then once you do it, you're like,
Yeah.
okay, she was super nice. That was okay.
Yeah.
That went well, and it's like, so it
Well, and I
builds your
think with
confidence a
her
lot.
also because she has the British accent. So I mean, that's
Yeah.
automatically you're like,
Yeah.
oh, you're so much smarter than me because you have a British accent.
Yeah. And she has a really unique accent. It's really,
Uh-huh.
I love it. Yeah. It's just nice listening to her.
Hmm.
Um, and then, I started something called the Inner Circle for couples therapists,
Yeah, yeah, I
which
saw that.
I've been doing a lot of teaching on. I've been doing a lot of consultation calls talking about cases. So just another great opportunity for me to build um, my ability to work with couples.
Hmm.
So
So,
it's just been such a great opportunity.
so now with that, the inner circle, I mean, is that sort of this is what I wish I had when I was going through this, like as a grad student and moving into the couple space, and it's yeah. Can you kind of explain what it is fully? You're listening to OTC episode 56 with Shane Birkel, host of the Couples Therapist Couch podcast. We'll be right back after a brief word from our sponsor.
Would you like to talk to a counselor but can't find the time? Would you rather talk to someone from the comfort of your own home? If so, Parenting and Family Solutions is here to help. We now offer teletherapy to all clients who reside in the state of Pennsylvania. Using our secure portal, you can have a video session with your counselor using a laptop, desktop computer, or smartphone. Visit our website to learn more at www.parentfamilysolutions.com or give us a call at 717-602-5560 to see if teletherapy might be a good fit for you. Let us help you build a stronger family and a healthier you.
And then I started something called the Inner Circle for couples therapists,
Yeah, yeah, I
which
saw that.
I've been doing a lot of teaching on. I've been doing a lot of consultation calls talking about cases. So just another great opportunity for me to build um, my ability to work with couples.
Mhm.
So it's just been such a great opportunity.
So now with that, the inner circle, I mean, is that sort of this is what I wish I had when I was going through this, like as a grad student and moving into the couple space, and it's yeah. Can you kind of explain what it is fully?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So all of those things I was describing as I left grad school about trying to find more training as a couples therapist, looking at all these models that are going to take a couple years and several thousands of dollars to get certified in, and feeling overwhelmed and confused. What I've done is I've created this inner circle, which is a low monthly fee. So it's really reasonable, probably about the amount of a copay. that you, as the therapist, pay each month. And in exchange, we do weekly consultation calls where I answer questions. People can talk about cases. So you're getting that one-on-one support if you need it. You can post the questions in the Facebook group that's private just for people in the inner circle. If you don't want to show up on a call, you can still get your questions answered that way.
Okay.
And then I do a workshop once a month. Like I did EFT 101. I had a really great trainer do that one. I had Gottman 101.
Wow,
I
that's so
had
cool.
working with infidelity. I've had working with sex in couples therapy. So just these little, they're 1 to 2 hours each, but it's a video workshop. These presenters usually have slides that they're sharing by video, and it's like walking you through some aspect of couples therapy that's really teaching you how to work with these things. And I just partnered with Clearly Clinical, it's called, which is this podcast where you can actually get CEUs. They're all set up so that every episode you listen to, you can get CEUs. So if you join the Inner Circle now, you can get all your CEUs for free, or for the, whatever the price of the membership is. There's no additional fee, which is cool too, and a bunch more training opportunities.
Which I'm going to pause there for a minute just to explain for other therapists that might be listening. They should already know just what a huge benefit consultation is. But for most of the public that, they're going to be on the other end of the couch. I just did an episode that's coming out, I think, this week on when therapy goes wrong, when a therapist abuses a client. And that concept that, you want a therapist that is in supervision and in consultation and continuing to grow and work on those things and be talking with other leaders in the field to stay sharp. And that doesn't always happen. Would you agree, Shane? Sadly.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's good for people to be informed consumers when they're looking for a therapist we could probably do a much better job of that in the field as a whole.
Yeah.
Of helping people see that. But, some stuff people can look for. If you're looking for couples therapy, I would definitely recommend that you try to find someone who has had specialized training in some sort of couples therapy, whether it's Gottman or EFT or relational life therapy or whatever it is. That all of those are great trainings. That or that they're in the inner circle or something, but that and I know it's hard because in some areas of the country it's hard to find therapists who have those kind of specialization too.
Well, a lot of times, it's depending on where you live, that idea of like feast or famine. If you're in really rural area where you don't have access to a lot of people, you may not. But then if you're in like an LA or something like that, it's like you could probably find just as many therapists, probably more therapists than Starbucks, I would imagine.
Right.
So
right.
in that first session when meeting a therapist, would you say asking flat out, like, what is your treatment focus or modality? What specific method are you trained in for couples counseling?
That's a good question. I haven't thought about that. I think that would be a good question. I think another thing is that you should just experience the therapy with the person. And like feel for yourself. Is it helpful? Does it feel like this person is going to be helpful to me? Does it feel like they know what they're talking about? And I think a big thing is empowering people to not go back if it's not. To say, okay, try someone else. Don't give up. But if this particular therapist isn't working for you after 2 or 3, 4 sessions, you're not feeling like you're getting what you need or that it's that helpful, maybe there's another type of therapist who would be better for you. It doesn't mean that therapy isn't working. It might just mean that this person isn't a good fit for what you need.
Which sadly, I think that's more the mindset is like, oh, therapy doesn't work. so
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't do it anymore. And you see the same thing with medication a lot of times. So thank you for pointing that out, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. And I might but not be the best therapist for a lot of people. If even if people come to me and maybe sometimes what they need is a therapist with a different sort of training or style, and that's fine too. I don't want people to feel like they have to go to a certain therapist or something.
Mm-hmm. And can you speak to, couple trying to find a therapist? One of the things I see so often is one partner wants the therapy, the other one does not. Any advice that you would give around that of
Yeah, absolutely.
how to help motivate that other that other partner? Speaking of leverage.
Absolutely. Yeah. So part of that is about the leverage. I will say too that I think that you can make a huge difference in your relationship just by working on yourself without your partner even needing to know that what you're doing in therapy or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the things that I teach people, I talk in therapy, in couples therapy. I also do with individuals I work with.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of it is about self-esteem and boundaries. And so what we find is that, and this goes back to the power dynamics I was talking about when I'm looking at couples. Oftentimes there's one, RLT, or relational life therapy, RLT, calls it the latent and the blatant. I don't know if I really like that terminology very much, but basically the latent partner is the one who is more reserved, who doesn't have as much of a voice, who's not speaking up as much. And the blatant partner is the one who's more obviously sort of critical, demanding, controlling, could be a number of things. And so it depends which partner I'm working with. If I have a partner who's refusing to come to therapy, it's most likely a blatant partner, but it could be either one.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I'm working with a latent, then I need to help them have a voice in their relationship. I need to teach them how to have good boundaries with their partner. I need to teach them what a boundary is and what crosses the line of a boundary.
Mm-hmm.
No human being is entitled to be verbally abusive to another human being. And by verbally abusive, I mean name calling, being critical, sarcasm, passive aggressive comments. I mean, things that I do myself sometimes in my relationship. But it's about, I need to recognize it when that happens and be accountable to when that happens.
Yes.
And so if this is going on, I need to teach the latent partner how to set good boundaries around that, how to remove themselves from the situation if that's going on, and then how to have a voice. So part of that is it might take a lot of self-esteem work. I do a lot of really deep sort of trauma work, inner child work. What makes you feel like you can't have a voice in this relationship? And so I'm going to build this person up and help them to have a voice. And it's not about, I think a lot of the time there's this vision that's like, I was weak, now I'm strong, screw you, now I'm going to be the mean one.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like that. It's like, I was weak, now I'm strong, and I'm going to tell you in a loving way, or I'm going to stand up for myself in a loving way and tell you what I need and want in this situation, and be able to communicate so this gets to the leverage. If you keep treating me this way, here is what will happen. And it doesn't have to be about leaving the relationship, but it could be a number of other things. But it has to be clear and there has to be follow through. Mm-hmm. And I've helped a lot of people as individuals really transform their relationships. Sure. Because then their partner has to get on board, or they're going to start to feel a big difference in their life if they don't.
Now, do you get much pushback from therapists that you're working with that sort of take the stance of like, well, that's being manipulative, or I don't want to push or be directive with a client to have them do that to their spouse, or yeah.
Well, from my perspective, I'm teaching the individual really good relationship skills. I'm not encouraging them to be manipulative. I'm encouraging them to stand up for themselves with love.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I would say if there was a therapist who thought that that's what was happening or something like that.
Okay.
And I would also say if your partner is saying, "Hey, why is your therapist making you be manipulative?" That could be a really open door for me to say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that you feel that way. Why don't you come in and let me know your perspective so I can have a better idea for, your perspective, what's going on."
Yeah. Well,
And I'll often, and to go back to the original question, I'll often say, if the partner's trying to get the other partner into the therapy session, I'll often say, "Why don't we set up a phone call and you can tell me everything that's going wrong with the person I'm working with as an individual,
mm-hmm.
what you think is wrong." So then I'm getting them on the phone. They think they're just telling me about the partner who's coming to therapy, but then I'm engaging them in the conversation. I'm, letting them know that I'm going to be supportive and helpful to them too, and
mm-hmm.
and I might be able to get them to come in that way.
Well, and yeah, sort of that. I always think of that as like dipping a toe in the pool. Like kind of slowly getting their feet wet and getting that comfortability with like it's not this like big bad thing that you think it is. Yeah. Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, and in terms of you were talking about boundaries, and I know you do a lot of work around when a couple gets triggered. Can you kind of speak to that a little bit in terms of how do you help couples in a session when they are triggered, or even in life outside of the therapy session?
Yeah, absolutely. And this could be a really big conversation. So I'll just give you the overview to keep it really brief. But basically, the way that I see human beings,
that just means you'll have to come back. That's all.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I'd love to. The way that I see human beings is that when I'm experiencing stress with my partner, it's usually 90% historical, my own trauma of growing up in my family, that we all have, no matter how great your family was, mm-hmm. And maybe 10% actually what my partner is doing in front of me. And what happens for us, we get in this fight or flight mode and we lose sight of the fact that this is a person we care about most. This person is on our side, that we love each other. And we start thinking that it's someone we have to protect ourselves against. So these are neural pathways that were started being formed from birth. But, if you imagine being 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, and, one that I see a lot is, well, this is a cliche, but let's say angry men. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of truth that's something that exists in our society. And the reason for that is the way that we're socialized. From a very young age, you can imagine a little 6-year-old boy who is crying about something they feel sad or hurt about, that it's really, it has been really easy for a lot of parents to dismiss, to minimize, to say, "Stop crying," or "I'll give you something to cry about," to shut those feelings down. So what human beings in general, but men in particular, learn from a very young age is to lock their emotions down. Mm-hmm. And what we find is that as adults, these neural pathways have become very deeply ingrained in people, and men in particular have a very hard time expressing emotions, being connected to emotions. And so what happens, and the only one that's acceptable is anger.
Yeah.
Because it's powerful. Every man has a right to express his power and blah, blah, blah. And so what it all looks like anger. And so what I'll often say when I'm working with a couple and someone starts, if let's say it's a husband and a wife, and the husband starts getting angry at his wife, I'll that's where I'll slow it down. I'll say, take a deep breath, and I'll say, wow, there's a lot of anger there. And they'll say, yeah, of course, my wife is doing blah 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 blah. And then there's 3 questions that I use to take it to the family of origin, because I'll often do this really quickly. I'll say, who did this to you in your family?
Wow.
Who was the angry one in your family growing up?
Now that's question 2. Or is that the same one? Who did this to you, or who was
So the first
angry?
question is, who did this to you? The second question is, who did you see do this? So it could be your dad was always getting angry at your mom and you saw it. The third one is, who did you do this to and no one stopped you?
Wow.
This would be kids who had no limits set on them. Their parents never set any limits. So oftentimes that'll take me right into, so that oftentimes the guy will say, oh yeah, well, you think this is bad. My dad was yelling in my face all the time when I was a kid. And then we're off to the races. Then I'm like, oh, hold on. Then I'll be like, hold on a second. Your dad yelled at you? Oh my gosh, that's awful. Can you imagine being a little 5-year-old kid and your dad yelling in your face? And then we're getting into it, and then I'm getting them into those emotions that they should have felt when they were 5 years old. They should have been allowed to feel, and getting into the sadness and the hurt. And eventually, again, this is a huge, super brief overview, but eventually we're going to get to, of course you get angry with your wife. Of course. Would you like me to teach you something different? And it's blaming the fact that you went through this. It's helping them see it in a whole new light. And I do lots of inner child work. So we'll bring that 5-year-old out into the room and we'll say, why don't you have a little conversation with that 5-year-old that he needed to have when he was growing up in that family? And we'll work with that in the presence of the partner.
Okay, wow. Okay, we got to stop there just because, one, just for the listeners, hopefully you understand, like, how much gold Shane just gave us in terms of like those 3 questions, because a lot of times I'll do like an anger genogram where it's like a whole list of questions. So like in 3 questions, you literally just like cut straight to the core. With the inner child work, do you find, again, not to be stereotypical, but do you find a lot of men really struggle to go there? With that
I've been amazed at how many men are dying to go there.
Wow.
They're ready for it, and there is some resistance at times, and I think the therapist has to have a lot of confidence in what they're doing. I think I've noticed as I've gotten a lot more experience and training in this, and my ability to do this has improved a lot, that my confidence in being present in the room helps a lot, because I know exactly what I'm doing and I know where I want to go with them. And they feel that, and it takes them there more quickly. But I do still get resistance sometimes. And when you have people who have gone through a huge amount of neglect in their childhood, this is a whole other conversation. They'll have a hard time accessing those emotions because they just never had any encouragement to express anything their whole life.
Man. Well, and I love the you were saying about, can you imagine being 5 years old and somebody yelling in your face? It reminded me of the Positive Parenting Solutions talks about the competent giant, sort of putting yourself in the kid rolled again, and this gigantic adult is, yelling and screaming in your face. It's so powerful. Wow.
Yeah, totally.
So, sorry, in terms of the getting triggered, okay, you're talking about, getting them into that inner child. How do you get them out? Okay, let's do something different.
Oh yeah, good. That's a good question. Actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because here's what we do next is maybe in my office, I will guide you through a little conversation with that 5-year-old. And when that 5-year-old's in the room, it's all about love and understanding and acceptance. It's all about, hey, it was not fair what you went through. And I'm here now. I love you. I'm going to take care of you. And you don't have to put so much pressure on yourself in this situation.
Now,
So
you're saying
what
this is...
so now what might happen, it might be more like so what I'm going to do eventually is I'm going to name who's coming up when they get angry with their wife, for example. And so that might be more like an angry teenager. Let's say that this is a 13-year-old part of yourself.
Okay.
That when you get angry with your wife, this angry 13-year-old comes up into the situation. And so we're going to have a conversation with this 13-year-old, let's say. The 5-year-old isn't usually that angry yet. But the 13-year-old, when they sit in front of you, you're going to say, hey, buddy, I love you. I accept you. I'm going to take care of you now. You don't have to keep putting pressure on yourself to deal with these situations anymore. You don't have to protect yourself anymore. I'm here now. I got this. And the person is speaking from their functional adult self. And so we want to move people into their functional adult. And so the next time you get angry with your wife, here's what I want you to do. You feel that whoosh of emotion, of anger come up from your toes into your chest, into your face, and you feel that anger about to burst out. I want you to take a deep breath and realize that 13-year-old is trying to come out into the situation. I want you to breathe. If you need to take a few minutes to yourself, that's fine. And I want you to put your arms around him and say, hey, buddy, I got this. You stand behind me while I face the situation with my wife. I love you and I care about you, and you need to get your sticky hands off the steering wheel and have some limits set on you like most kids do while I take care of this. It's not your burden to carry. You don't have to have this pressure anymore. And so we're moving people into the prefrontal cortex. We're forcing them to be their adult self in the conversation when they have it with their partner. And then they're going to be using all the skills that we've been teaching them in the couples therapy, which only their functional adult can use. That's true for all of us. When we're in an adaptive child part of ourself, it's going to look ugly. If it's hysterical, it's historical.
Man,
if you aren't in control of your emotions, that is something from your childhood.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. My mind is blown because, like we were saying, we could just keep going and going and going, and I know you can't do that today. I really wish that we could.
This is
but
great. Yeah, this is great.
So, yeah, I like I was saying, I would love to have you back on to talk about some of this and some of the other in terms of, especially like. One of the pain points that I see is when there has been an affair, some type of infidelity or betrayal, and how do you recover from that? I think the Gottmans and a number of others talk so much about there's more than just sexual betrayal. I think that one gets the spotlight so much, but there's so many others out there.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, okay, bring us home a little bit. In terms of you, the Inner Circle, the podcast, where are you going to be going in 2020? What are you going to be working on?
Yeah, I'm really excited because most of my podcast and the Inner Circle and most of my stuff that I've been putting out there has been directed towards therapists. That's really my audience, and which has been awesome and a great place to start. But I'm really excited. I'm really hopeful in 2020. I'm not exactly sure yet, but I'm going to start working on things for just the general public as an audience, people who want to improve their relationships. So I don't know if I might start another podcast. I might write a book. I might start a blog or something. But I really want to start creating information that's going to be really helpful for the public, because obviously I can only see however many people a week in my office. Yeah. And I feel like there's so much of this information that could be really helpful to other people. So I want to start figuring out ways to get the information out there and helping people who want to improve their relationships. So that's hopefully to come in 2020. We'll see See what happens.
I was gonna say, yeah, that's huge. And I always joke, you've said it on air, so now it's like,
yeah, that's right.
I've got to.
Yes,
man,
that's good. Accountability.
Well, and for me, I don't know. In talking with a lot of the guests that I have on and things like that, I always joke, and there's definitely a kernel of truth of the imposter syndrome a little bit, and the like, man, I feel like I'm not doing anything with my life. Like these other people are out here, writing books, and it always made me think of creating your own treatment modality. Like, how do you, feel like you have something that you're like, yes, this is. Everybody needs this. This is my treatment modality, and I'm gonna create it. I'm always like, my mind is blown by that concept of like, I can't imagine creating my own treatment modality.
I know, totally. I know. I heard this. This was just some video on Facebook, and I think it was like a graduation speech or something. But this woman was really cool. She was talking about how, when she started her journey to whatever she accomplished something great. When she started her journey, she put on the shoes that she needed to wear to accomplish what she needed to accomplish. And they were way too big for her. And she clunked around and tripped all the time, and it just wasn't working. And it took her 8 years or whatever to get to the point where the shoes finally fit, and she could perform in the way that she needed to in order to accomplish her goals. I mean, that was like an analogy. Mm-hmm. And so I thought that was really cool. Part of it for all of us, I think, is that acceptance for where we are on the journey, that it's easy to get caught up in looking at what everyone else has accomplished and what they're doing and how far along they are, and to lose sight of where we are, to look back and say, wow, there is a lot further that I want to go. But I've actually come pretty far already, and let me take a minute to give myself a little bit of credit for those things that all of us have done up to this point, and to feel okay with the fact that we're not there yet, and to be hopeful about the things that we want to do next.
Nice. There you go. I just had my own little therapy session in like a minute.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, great. Yeah.
So
it's a relief. Yeah, to think about.
Yeah, definitely. It really is.
Yeah.
So in terms of where people can find you, if they have questions, if they want to follow you on social media or check out the podcast, where do you send them?
Yeah, absolutely. You can go to couplestherapistcouch.com, and there's tons of information there. That's mostly for couples therapists. That's where you can find out more about the podcast. You can get information about the inner circle, all that kind of stuff. If you want to check out my practice website, it's ShaneBirkel.com. Mm-hmm. And I have a local practice here about an hour from Boston where I see couples all the time. I've been getting into seeing more and more couples by video conference and individuals. But I also do a lot of intensives. People have come to town just for a day or two to do an intensive, stuff like that. But as I said, hopefully I'll have a lot more to offer, a lot more free information and stuff like that for couples in 2020. But that's where you can find me. Awesome. Yeah.
Well, Shane, thank you so much for your time. And just like I was saying, it's so amazing that we, went so deep with such a short amount of time, and obviously just a huge wealth of knowledge. So thank you for scratching the surface on that and sharing that with us.
Yeah, thank you so much, John. This has been great. It's been really helpful. Yeah.
Take care. Have a good day.
Yeah, you too.
There you have it. Another episode done. So in OTC 57, I'll be sharing a conversation I had with Kristen Ulmer, who is the author of The Art of Fear. And if you're not familiar with Kristen, definitely check her out. She has an amazing story. Just a lifetime of awesome stories and experiences. And has really put together a great book sharing from a lot of those experiences and her relationship with fear over the course of her life and career. So I'm looking forward to next episode. I'll catch you then.